Hello guys, welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel. My name is Marty, and if you hadn't guessed, today we're watching The Secret of Roan Inish from 1994. Now I believe this is an Irish film, and fun little fact, I'm actually part Irish. My family come from Dublin, Ireland. Kind of wanted to go into this one blind. This has been requested by you guys over on Patreon, so if you want to check out the full uncut reactions to the films that I watch, then you can check those out over on the Patreon page or as a YouTube member as well. By the way, if you want to check out the film trivia to this, I'm going to be doing some at the very end of this, alongside my thoughts on the film. Oh, and also, Céad Míle Fáilte, which means 100,000 welcomes in Irish. This is The Secret of Roan Inish from 1994. Hey, Samuel Goldwyn. Oh, digitally restored. I didn't realise it had been. I could already sense the Irishness. Smell the sea air already. I so want to go to Ireland again. Ah, based on the book Secret of Roan Inish. Oh, and it's edited by John Sayles as well.
Whose ever embrace all creatures live, whose name and dwelling place, Lord, light and rest.
Oh, it's a mum to 1946. Is that when we are now?
It's in the pub.
I was gonna joke and be like, with the pub? It's a very Irish thing.
It's a little sprat again.
There's a Guinness sign.
In a strange land without a mother's touch.
A drunkard?
Everyone is drinking Guinness.
Fresh air, after like her breathing the poison fumes. You have to take her to the country.
There's no work to be had at home.
So the country.
We're never going back to the island.
Lemon squash for you, dear.
Isn't that place to be raising a girl around here? Do my best.
You try, bless you. Why not send her off to her grandfather's place then?
Can't just abandon her. That must be difficult for him because he's a single dad trying to work as well, and he's got to look after his little girl. Well, he's in the pub, I know. But... it's like her only friend, the seal, waiting for her. As lonely as she is. Wait, what? Where's the dad? He left her to go on her own? Love the music. I love the house.
We were expecting you later.
Father had to put me on the morning boat.
You climbed all this way up. Grandmother saw you below. She nearly had it fit.
She knew it was me.
It's their hair.
With that head of hair.
Very Irish.
I know you were a Keneally. Their father and his brother the same.
Oh, but for Jimmy, he's the only dark one.
Better not mention anything about Jamie in front of grandmother.
He's the black sheep of the family, is he?
Look at your arms, dear. Like sticks they are.
The sea air she's needing.
Sure, I hear you can't find a proper hen's egg in that city.
Once here is nothing compared to what was laid on the island.
You and that island.
Didn't her own cow only give half the milk she gave in Roan Inish?
Oh, Roan Inish is the island they keep talking
Why
about.
did we have to leave?
It was the young people, dear. Like your father and his brothers. They were restless on the island, and came the war and jobs across the sea. And now as they have the taste of the city in their blood...
City indeed. Nothing but noise and dirt and people that's lost their senses. Couldn't tell the difference between a riptide and a raindrop if you shoved their face in the water.
But you and grandmother.
Oh, no. You couldn't start up from naught, living alone on an island. There isn't a thing out there for us but sad memories.
I can imagine that back in those days. It would be, even now.
Can you see it from here?
The sky is willing, some can.
The Secret of Roan Inish, then, is the secret of a certain island.
Do you see a lighthouse on a long, flat island?
Yes, I think, on the left.
Great island of dark hills.
And there's a wee green bit of an island between them.
She sees it, Tess.
Ah, you put it into her head.
She didn't say about the green.
Only them that's born to the islands can see it from this distance.
They say the east is our future and the west is our past. The islands to the west of us.
That's Roan Inish, island of the seals. And there's more of them now as the people have deserted.
The seal.
You've been out there.
Once a week if the current's right. I bless all here.
Amen.
You remember him, Fiona? Cousin Eamon. Uncle Patrick's boy.
I was trying to figure out where they are, like from their accents.
We've moved back to the west.
How come you never left with your family?
I tried it for a month and I ran back here. I'm not clever enough to live in town. Too fast for me.
But a young fella in a curragh as ever I've seen.
Love of the sea is a sickness, and you two will come to grief for it.
To be fair, I would love to live by the sea.
I've not set foot there since the evacuation. But grandfather knows the shoals all about it. And what feeds there and when. You always come back with a full net, while the rest of them are scared to fish it.
So they evacuated the island.
Why are they scared?
Amen.
Yeah.
Tales is all.
Tales of what?
Monster.
If it clears up this evening, you might see the light again.
Light?
Well, the lighthouse? I can't believe I've not seen this until now. I love these kind of magical, quaint films. Just something about
the sea
it.
gives, and the sea takes away.
Comforting.
He's my father's father's father now, Keneally man. And he was only a few years older than you are now. His name was Sean Weichel. Though times weren't as hard on the island as they were on the mainland, it's never easy pulling a living from the sea. The English were still a force in the country then. They had the schools, their language and their ways that you had to learn or else.
And I think notably lack of money into families was the reason they didn't have the shoes.
Was a new schoolmaster, and stiff as a cat's whiskers he was. Sean Weichel put the cingulum about his neck. It was a punishment of speaking Irish within his earshot.
Egypt! Egypt!
Calling him an Egypt. Flippin' Egypt.
But the shame was too great and began to beat on the man.
Please, it's a little girl.
Now, Sean Weichels' father had great hopes for the boy, that he would learn to read the Englishman's language, though to be a leader for his people.
Who didn't want to learn any of it.
Need to kill me to make me go back, he says. You'll have nothing now, he said. The black rocks and the wild waves and the hard sky above you. Trip out with his father, that a fierce storm flew over the 4 boats in all, took them in its terrible grip and lifted them high and turned.
They all died?
Slapped them back down into the boiling black sea, wraps of their currachs around them. His father writhed below without a whisper.
That's dark to tell the kid.
For to fight the cold sea is only to prolong your suffering. And he beat the water with his legs and arms, refused to swallow him up.
So he was the only one that survived. I thought when they were saying it that it was almost a fairy tale, like a myth.
Some was even afraid to touch him, but it was women mostly.
Like a story they told down over the years.
Was more dead than alive. And there wasn't a fire in Ireland could bring the blood of life back into him. Country people still lived with their beasts inside, and their heat went out through him. He began to shake. He slept for hours.
It's actually a really good idea, having the cows either side to keep him warm.
When he started to sweat, the woman cut him loose from her animals and wrapped him in blankets warmed in the heart.
He's a brand new lad.
He woke to their faces above him. Is this heaven then, he said. No, lad, said the woman of the house. It's only Chathdin. Chathdin is the island. People thought that the souls of all Ireland's dead were held to rest.
So he probably thought he was dead.
Believed he had drowned and come to the hereafter. It was a seal that brought me here, he told them.
Like the seal she saw.
He came under me and lifted me up and bore me along through the storm, and that's all I remember. But his father, brothers, uncles and cousins, all gone. Only Sean Weichel left, keep the Keneallys alive.
And you were saved by a seal?
Yeah.
It's a wonderful story.
There's some think so.
Something is probably made up as well.
Some say they should never save a drowning man.
Like I thought maybe it was.
The sea will take, the sea must have.
That's a lot of foolishness, Hugh.
Said that some that are saved turned wicked afterwards.
What happened to Sean Michael?
Jailed by the English. Died in prison.
I used to love my my granddad telling me stuff like little stories.
Superstitious old man.
Yeah, my Irish granddad he was from Dublin.
May the 8 brightest angels from the city of grace preserve this house and all its people till the coming of the day.
Look to the stars. You might see Roan Inish. Yeah, because they said about the light, didn't they? What is that?
Light.
You'll find him below on the strand. Just follow the path across.
I have a playlist, by the way, full of this kind of music. What is he making? Looks like tar.
Stirring the tar in this bucket here.
Yeah, it is tar, yeah, for coating the bottom of the boat to keep it safe from water.
People use cowhide on their currachs, and it was calico. Now we make do with canvas. The tar is what it always was.
Don't go near it, bird. You'll die.
Would you like some tea, dear? Down an extra mug for you. Now.
Oh, that is very weak tea. From the looks of it, that looked like it was milk.
I think I saw the light last night.
What light might that be?
The one Ewan spoke of on Roan Inish.
Plenty of things could be taken for a light in the dark, and no telling how far off they might be.
You just want me to forget about Jimmy.
Well, none of us forget him, dear. Life goes on.
Can't even remember when we lost him. I was already off on the ship when it happened.
It was a strange day. Everyone on the beach for the evacuation. The air was very still, like it is sometimes before a storm. It's like a dream that day. Slow, terrible dream that you watch. Can't stop it. There's only your father and brother ashore, wee Jamie, sleeping in his cradle.
Just a tiny little baby. That's a gorgeous cot. Ah, they seem to have left the baby. Oh, it's the bird again. Why would they be attacking them though? Warning them off to stay away from the baby. No, the baby! Surely someone would go and get him back, yeah? Wait, so this is the thing of, yeah, when they all get taken under, they get lifted up and then the boat's smashed, but he survives. I've got to admit, they've done really well to visually show the storm on the choppy waters. Presumably not actually filming it in a storm. Continue, or just keep staring.
I don't know how the cradle could have made up so much speed. Sea had taken it. Just was angry with us for leaving Roan Inish. Mind that tar love, it'll be stiffer than an old man in a winter's night.
Wait. What is Wordsworth? I know what he meant, but that at first did not sound right.
He could still be out there.
Alive? And cows could have wings, dear.
You see this? It's a seal rented open. Terrible rascals for stealing fish.
There's one staring at me from the rock when I come in.
Maybe he's fell in love.
Could be the magical seal.
Got to be careful though. There's one day a year all the seals gather to choose their new king. Whichever of the island girls he fancies most.
And make them for queen.
As his queen.
It's just stories.
Some stories is true though.
Grandfather told me about Jimmy.
Didn't tell you the rumours. Just them who claim to have seen him. Sailing the seas in his cradle boat. Going into a fine little gossip. Sitting in the stern of his cradle. Captaining his ship. Always there's creatures about it. Seals swimming in the water. Great crowd of seagulls squawking overhead.
You give it nightmares.
Or try to come closer. He vanishes like a phantom, they say.
Where do they see him?
Coming back from the far side of the island. Close to Roan Inish.
Ah, he's making up stories.
Can I go out with you sometimes? In your boat?
It'll be a few days before the tar is dried. Have to ask your grandmother first. She won't have you out on a boat.
You never know. She might say yes.
Grandmother!
She said yes. Or she lied, maybe.
I've lost track. Is this Roan Inish?
The seals. I was lucky enough, nearish where I live, there was a random seal on a river. Don't know why. They're not even meant to be this far up river, because I don't live near the sea, but it had come inland down the river.
It's his first year at sea.
He's the one that stared at me from the boat coming over. I'm sure he is. He really did remember me.
Hide your face then. Be after taking you for a wife.
His name is Jax.
There it is.
Roan Inish.
Isn't it beautiful? Remember Fiona? That was your house there at that end. Tess and I were next door.
And ours was the one beyond.
We'll set those pots. We'll be back. Don't wander too far.
She's gonna go wandering. Oh, I bet that place looks a mess. It's been weathered through the open door. There'll be all sorts of animals and stuff in there, I presume. I was wondering if these were real houses that were on this island. Or did they build them for the film? Like if they were really empty for the film and then they decorated them... I don't think we saw them actually on the inside earlier, did we? Someone's been there. Is it the guy they said could still be alive? Look in the back. I say that because the stick had embers on it already. He made the fire using flint.
I wish you could talk to me.
Just pops down. Hello. Footprints. Fairly fresh.
Fiona!
Do you miss it greatly?
That's only a place, I suppose.
Yeah, but it's the magic. It's gorgeous.
This is the way of life.
I'm moving back. When I'm a man.
Haunting the island, all on your loads.
Oh no, I'll have a wife.
Look at she have you women. Not many women these days see much romance and hard work and solitude.
I'm moving back just the same.
Even if you have to live by yourself.
Remember the evenings best. Your mother, God rest her, would be laying out food. Father's drying his feet by the fire. Then you, Fiona, will be Jeni, off at the corner with old pieces of dinnerware. Tea parties it was. Always a great one for the tea parties.
Go have a good tea party, even if they are imaginary half the time.
Someone's been in our old cottage. Someone is living there.
The fire.
Be daft.
And I saw a footprint of a little boy. We've destroyed it.
All sorts of things can look like a footprint.
I saw it.
Have you guys ever had crab?
And the houses are in a terrible state, I suppose.
They weren't so bad with a
Lovely.
little bit of cleaning.
A fresh crab from a fishing village as well.
Birds nesting in the thatch and the chimney. Creepy crawly things in every corner.
Our old cottage looked as if we left it a day ago.
Sand and everything blowing off the beach.
It was clean, though.
And the mornings and the mist on the water.
We could move back. Grandfather said it's the best fishing.
Yeah, move back.
I've only the picture in my mind of your poor little brother floating away.
The only real tragedy is young people passing on before their time.
But he might not be dead.
I always remember his eyes. Dark they were, with a great soul behind them. He was here before.
Tess, don't start.
The old way they used to measure sugar.
To the green, mean penny pinching creature, Flynn.
Is this the granddaughter then?
Why are they all
It is.
smirking and...
She isn't one of the dark ones, is she?
Mind your own business, Flynn.
Oh, because of the dark ones, the thing he said.
You wait here, darling, while I go and fetch your grandfather. You call this fresh, do you?
That's a weird looking cabbage. Cabbage lettuce.
She's the original tough customer.
I would not be buying it.
What's dark ones? I said before that it wasn't a dark one.
Haven't they told you?
Thought they were about because they came from the island. Just let her walk off with the random guy.
There's an example for you. I could be your father's first cousin. Once in a generation, the Keneally's split out a dark one.
Oh, it was in dark hair.
Will he know me?
You can talk to me if you like, but there's no saying if you'll talk back.
I love how they make boys just so mystical in this for her.
He's a bit special, if you know what I mean.
Oh, gutting fish.
I'm Fiona. You know my father?
I know you.
You do?
You're after something.
I am.
She's like, what? I am?
Find it.
I've no idea of the future. I can see the past quite well. The present, if the weather's clear.
Leave off, Tig. You're frightening the wee girl.
He's not
Again.
easily frightened, this one.
Mystical.
You know why I'm dark?
Because his brain's full of shoe polish and it's leaking.
I thought it was quite funny.
The Keneallys first came to Roan Inish, the lonely Irish spoken on the islands. They built their meagre homes on the beach. There's only a few families and all related. So when it came time to find a mate, it was elsewhere you had to look.
Oh wait, does that mean that he...
There was a boy among them, Liam, who always preferred to be alone. He set his own traps, built his own curragh, and sat alone at all the family gatherings, walking out around the outer islands. He saw a thing his eyes could scarce believe. In them days, Sayles was haunted.
No, this one was hiding.
For he believed, as many did then, that there was no worse luck than to harm a seal.
Yeah, they're lovely creatures. They're so sort of calm and placid.
I'd seen a selkie, a creature that's half human and half beast. Old
Wow.
stories told of such creatures luring ships onto the rocks and pulling sailors down into the drink. But all Liam knew was he'd never seen a woman so lovely in all his life.
Oh, it was a woman dressed as a seal. What? Yes, it supposedly was. The woman came from being a seal. I thought maybe that was supposed to be like a wetsuit, or for some reason she was dressed as a seal.
Now it was said that whoever could capture the hide of a selkie would have it in their power to command as they would.
Oh, she's kind of familiar.
The selkie maid had seen men before, fled from their fishing hooks, but never had she seen one as handsome as Liam Keneally.
And so he married a selkie? Did they say selkie? She does look very Irish.
All the islanders had seen Liam row out to sea alone, and now all saw his return with the strange girl.
Oh, right. I was going to say come back alone as well. And it's all in his mind.
Island people is a careful lot, not likely to pass judgment on another person's business. There was something so unearthly about the girl that soon set their tongues to wagging. Shaking of heads when Liam married the stranger. She hardly spoke at all, and when she did, her Irish was queer sounding. more ancient than their grandfather's grandfather. And when they asked him where he'd found her, he'd only say Trebeg. Of course, this was nonsense. And she'd always be at the water, looking out at the seals and the birds. Hands full of shellfish and seaweed, which she'd simmer over a driftwood fire. Before long, she was asking him to build a cradle.
Aww. It's not going to be a seal, is it?
It must be made of the wood of a ship that sailed the ocean, will rock on the motion of the sea.
Oh, I quite like that element of it.
More of a ship than a cradle.
That's what it was from earlier. Wait, so is that supposed to be her mother? No.
With the ripple of the waves against the hull for a lullaby. Now the years passed, and Liam and Nuala, for that's what the Selkie called herself.
Nuala. Remember, my family's called Nuala.
Many children. There was always a touch of sadness about Nuala. She spent long hours looking out at that she'd come from, listening to the cries of the seals. One of these afternoons was her eldest, who was called Fiona, said the words to her that changed it all.
Oh, what? So another Fiona as well.
Céim fá go bhfuil cotta leather I wallach ag mahar since cry. Why does father hide a leather coat in the roof?
It's not a leather coat, it's her skin. Her silky skin.
Later that evening, as Liam was rowing home, he was followed by a solitary seal.
Oh, that seal looks evil. It's frowning at him.
It seemed joyous in its movements.
Did it?
And dived within the waves, joyous in the sleekness of its body. Its eyes, as with all its kind, held a sadness as deep as the soul. Liam felt a great emptiness inside.
Was it one of the family members of her when she was supposedly a seal? I'm trying to take all this in.
It was the faces of his children told him his fears were true.
What, their mum died?
He finds its skin again. Neither chains of steel nor chains of love can keep her from the sea. From that day on, it was forbidden to harm a seal on the island. Sometimes the Keneallys would see her.
Hence, having seen the seal.
Watching her children. And the cradle was passed down through the years.
There you go. I was wondering if it was the whole passed down thing.
There'd be one born with the dark eyes and the black hair.
And they would take it back. Sea would take it back.
These dark ones were most at home at sea. Great sailors and fisher folk.
Hence why her brother got taken back.
He's an admiral in the Royal Navy.
Your grandfather's ready.
Talking to the boys.
Welcome back, Fiona Keneally. We've been waiting.
It's lovely.
He's not mad. A wee bit strange, maybe. He always has been.
He was a sailor for a little while.
Did he upset you?
He's very pleasant.
Well, no, you're not to mind anything he says to you. Poor fella doesn't know if he's wide awake or dreaming.
Your grandfather and I have to go over to Killybegs tomorrow to deal with the landlord. Would you like to come?
Or maybe go to the Eamon. He has to deliver passes for the postman out among the smaller islands.
I'd like to go with him.
He's a troubled soul, Tig Keneally. If he's caught between earth and water.
He's a Keneally as well.
When the sun is just 4 fingers above the horizon, you'll be ready and waiting.
I promise.
And if the weather turns foul,
I'll go into the cottage and wait for you, I promise.
if any harm comes to you, they'll have me head.
I'll be careful.
You might see your brother. It's gonna be smoking. I like how she's just gone back there just to spend time there, rest. And who may you be? Oh, she slept a long time. Fire's gone out. She looks so at home. She's lived there all her life, just wandering around. What's a genius idea? Use the shell as a cup for water. I'm always really fascinated by the older relics and old houses that once were, because in Cornwall there's some places like this near Priest's Cove, I think it's called, near Tintagel, and there's a house there with no roof. I can't remember what they said it was, if it was a church or something. Look. Yeah, but the whole place is just like this. And now you can see why I like Cornwall, because Cornwall is my favourite place to be. Maybe that's part of my roots of family being from Ireland. Oh.
Jamie!
The boy.
I found you at last.
Splash back into the ocean.
Jamie!
The king's still riding in his cart. She may still be dreaming.
Saw him today.
Saw who?
Jamie!
Sure you did.
I went into the cottage and made a fire, fell asleep and dreamt of a stocky woman. And when I woke, I climbed to the top of the island and I saw that seal. Then I was walking and he was there, picking flowers. Before I could reach him, he was gone.
Gone where?
In his cradle.
Just talk of spirits out here, you know.
He wasn't a spirit. I saw the flowers he pulled up. He dropped them when he ran. Can a spirit do that? I saw him.
I do believe you. But you mustn't tell our grandparents about what happened today. You weren't even supposed to be out here.
But if they knew...
They'd only think you were dreaming it all.
Just be like, oh, we were riding the boat and we thought we saw a boy on the cliff.
Good evening, Grandfather.
That could work. Unless he knows.
Grandfather?
Is he okay? Something wrong with her, yeah.
What's wrong?
There you are, dear. You know, we don't own this house. Well, the landlord says he got a letter today from some wealthy people overseas who wants a place to summer in. A gold mine, he called it.
Where will you go?
Inland, I suppose.
Might have to go back to Roan Inish.
Oh, it was bad enough your grandfather having to come in off the island. But to take him away from the sea, I'm fearing his spirits will fail him.
They can't do that.
After a war, people is always ready to cut off the past and go forward. We're just the ones left behind is all. But that's not your worry, Fiona, darling. Your shoulders is too narrow to be carrying all of that.
It's not lifting at all. We can't take this wee one out. With dirty weather coming up.
It'll be just like what happened before.
Oh, it'll clear, you'll see.
The storm will take them.
Would never forgive me if you took a chill.
It's seen out but grey water in a day like this anyway.
Be careful now, climbing up to the house.
By the way, I know I say about the whole thing of like, oh, why'd they let her walk alone kind of thing. I know this was the 40s. And people are a lot more happy to let them roam.
Wait, your sandwiches. Grandfather?
They've disappeared already into the fog and mist.
Is that you?
Oh.
Jax, I can't see you.
Be careful, no, don't go down there. You're going to sail off in the boat. Yeah, I know this was the 40s, so they were a lot more lenient back then with letting children go out and off alone to do their thing. I mean, even when I was a kid, it wasn't the 40s, but when I was a kid, it was very much just go off and do your own thing for the day. That was after a certain age. Now people are a lot more stricter with that sort of thing, rightfully so.
Jax, is that you? Are you still there?
Oh no, you have no way to anchor yourself.
Hello? Is anybody out there?
Great.
Where are we going?
They're going to take you to Roan Inish. Lord of the Seals. You see the light in the
Won't you come ashore with me?
How did they do that? Maybe they were people with seal masks or heads on, and that's the reason why she's eating their lunch.
Jamie! It's me! Fiona!
Also, now knowing how old Jamie is, I can't imagine him lighting a fire. Look at the colours in the field. It's beautiful. I get a little bit creeped out at crabs. I've not seen them do this kind of thing before, like slowly clicking across the floor. There it is. Oh. I think my weirdness with the crabs thing is it could be like I have the fear of spiders, arachnophobia. They're not the same, I know. I like this shot. And the seal as well. Ah, hello.
Hey, don't go! Sister!
No, don't knock her down.
Jamie!
I kind of half wondered if in her mind, if the seal was going to almost have been like her mother.
Why must you always run from me?
Like her mother and the son living together. And her mother passed away, obviously, didn't she? Maybe she went back to being a seal.
I know you're out there, and I know you can understand me.
But maybe he is with his family.
Miss him terrible. We came back to give him to us.
Yeah, come back to the island.
To Roan Inish. Is that what you want? Are you still there?
Hence why the birds were attacking at the beginning, basically saying...
It's on a fire!
Yeah, hence the birds at the beginning going, don't leave the island.
I'm worried sick about you.
There's smoke in the chimney, and Jeni was inside, having tea with a little seal. But then they ran away.
Why have you been armed?
Gone crazy with some kind of fever.
I'm not sick.
What did you get out here then and slow this time?
The boat, it drifted.
There's no oars in it, grandfather. Look at this.
No, anchor too.
Someone playing tricks on us, and it might be you.
I don't lie.
I believe her, grandfather.
It's a madness that runs in the family.
He's in the cradle, and there's always seals about.
Talking to that tig, he put all this into your head. And get in that curragh. Think up some likely excuse for your grandmother.
But how would that have happened?
Seals indeed.
What would they say as an excuse for all of that happening?
Where's grandfather?
He's already into the pub this morning, and he'll be less likely to come out because there was a black mood he left with. I gave him hard with my tongue for taking you out yesterday.
Nothing bad happened. Do you know if Emma's going out in the motorboat today?
Doesn't matter whether he is or not. You're not going. There's no need of the bleak ocean for catching a dose of fresh air. One day ashore won't kill you now, will it?
No, Ma'am.
But she does love Roan Inish. Oh, is it that guy from earlier? The one who was chopping up the fish and stuff? Yeah, it is the guy with the fish.
Why does he run from me?
Where do you chase him?
It's my brother. He's lost out there.
He isn't lost at all.
He's
from
home.
another branch of the family. Why are you looking at me like that?
Don't know whether to believe you or not. Have you ever seen Jimmy?
I may be daft, girl, but I'm not blind.
There's a magic to the fantasy and I love it.
Fisherman's Bend.
Right.
Got to get them to move back.
Nobody's been in the island for years. It's derelict with weeds. The cottages has fallen to ruin.
Their ones aren't too bad.
And didn't you say you plan to move back yourself? What's to stop you now?
Grandmother will be the hard nugget. She worries awful about our grandfather's health.
Suppose a cold cottage right next to the sea. Then again, they already are in that.
She'd move back with Jamie though. The minute she would.
Could start with the cottages, fixing them up. What do you think?
I'll meet you here with Kenny Minion's boat in the morning.
I'll say we're off digging clams.
Wait, is that what they're going to do? They're going to do up the houses? So then there's a chance that they might get moved back. Oh.
Ah, look at that, will you? It's all our food floating away.
No!
We could row after it.
No, I'd losing half a day in the chase. Come on then.
You got to have the food. What will you eat other than fish? Thank you for requesting this, by the way. I really love this film. Yeah, it's going to take a lot of work. You could probably reuse some of that wood. Repurpose. Mind you, could have woodworm or something. Or damp. It's been in there for so long, hasn't it? That's it, and if they shut the doors and heat it, it'll also dry out the house as well. Is she manually getting the rust off? I think that's what she was doing.
Fiona!
What? Seal? They're going, you coming back? Ah, here's them catching their fish. Not gonna lie, they've done a fantastic job by themselves looking after one another. Oh, now the food comes back. Soggy with her little friend. All gone.
Maybe it could have taken the waves and all spilled out.
Oh, and redone itself back up.
Do you think that's what happened?
He thinks the little boy.
Not for a moment.
And how did the mussel gathering go today?
Oh, we worked wonders with them.
It was hard work.
Not to overtax yourself.
No, it's ever so good for me. Look at my muscles.
Well, it's improved your appetite anyway. You came in here as though the hunger of the world was on you.
It kind of was. What are they doing? See, who these days would be able to do this kind of stuff or just think of doing this.
Farmers? Who else? Farmers' mums.
Oh wait, what they were doing a minute ago, were they repairing the roof? Yeah, I think that's what they're doing. Putting the soil, the mud on top and then putting it on, yeah. Oh, they're worried about the house. Oh, yeah, their tea is so milky. Keep the tea bag in longer. And it's even started growing. How long have they been working on this? How do they know how to do half of this stuff? Like mixing whitewash paint. You did it. Oh, look at the place. And that's helping to keep it the roof weighted while it settles, I think. Because they've done it with all three. I thought it was just going to be the one.
We should plant some things up here.
When we move back, there'll be time. We'd better start back, Fiona. The tide won't wait.
They can even entertain the idea of moving back. I think the granddad would the nan? Oh, is that their mum?
Mother?
Your mother, is it?
Where did she come from?
Hasn't your father told you that?
Doesn't like to speak of her.
She came from Ballybuffet, back in the mainland. Travelling the hills in search of a meal and a place to sleep.
Or so he says. Maybe she came from the sea.
They was poor. Her father with no livelihood, only his day's pay. Well, they say the only true wealth is land.
Like we own in Roan Inish.
For all the good it does us.
Jimmy, your father, was my youngest and the dearest to me heart. Oh, but he was an airy boy. Bone lazy at times, like night and day was.
Can't put a wise head on a young body.
She was in Donegal town one day for the pilgrimage on St. Bridget's Day, which was her namesake.
Oh yeah, Bridget.
Sun or stars never shone on a better one. I loved her like a daughter.
My father was there.
We had a brilliant run on the mackerel that year. Your father and Matt Morgan had gone off to the mainland to try and sell what they'd left over.
First time he laid eyes on Bridget, she was leaving the church, and he was struck speechless with the sight of her.
As you do, when you see the one.
She wasn't a worldly girl at all. Any place off a Roan Inish might have been Paris, France.
And meanwhile, she's just as struck, with eyes that melted all the girls, wondering what she could do to meet him.
What did he say?
Would you like to buy some fish, miss?
She'd never tasted fish from the salty ocean in all her life, but she hadn't a shilling to her name to buy it with.
I might have to give it for free.
Remember the day she came, sitting on the back of the car. And I says to Tess, will you look at the prize Matt Morgan's brought back from Donegal? No, she says, for look at how Matt's got his eyes straight ahead at the island, and it's our Jimmy is Roan, so he won't let her out of his sight. From that day, Jim had the name of a steady husband and a hard worker.
She was the last one to marry onto Roan Inish, and the last one to die in it.
He always blamed himself, bringing her into the life of the sea.
You can't blame yourself for that, unless it was the sea that caused her death, like pneumonia or something because of the cold.
Your hands is getting rough.
Pulling the muscles that does it.
Yeah. Of course.
Look at them claws, will you? Gathering for a right blow tonight. Be hell's own fury for any creature caught without shelter.
Hope Jimmy comes in.
What's that you're saying?
Shush.
Saying I hope Jimmy comes in.
What can you mean by that?
I've seen him, grandmother.
She just dreamed him up. Sleeping one day in Roan Inish. A wish can be a powerful thing.
Once on a hillside picking flowers, and once in the cottage having tea with a seal. I'm not imagining it.
You've been to Roan Inish? When?
It's the seals that's been looking after him.
What have you been breathing in?
The seals, is it?
The truth, grandmother. Well, it is.
Oh, dear.
Oh dear, I'm gonna have to talk her down from this.
Oh, there's a box of biscuits up there on the shelf.
Where's she getting stuff to go out? So they can go out and find her?
Well, you don't want to sleep out there on the cold ground, now do you?
Did you look at that sky?
They're going to Roan Inish.
The sky as well as you. There's a storm coming, and it's no weather to be leaving a small boy outside in.
Oh.
I knew he wasn't gone from us. Holy Mother, I felt it all along. Now hurry on, will you? I'll get the lantern.
Oh, that thing is just crazy.
They say the Keneally's is the bad one.
It's a shame it's dark. I wanted them to see the house.
Mind the bed now, Eamon. There'll be enough damp on those old wrecks without a dose in the seawater.
They're thinking they're gonna be living in a damp house for a bit.
Now, what are you staring at now? Now, where's that Fiona got to? I need her to help gather seaweed for soup.
Tess.
Look.
You look what they've done.
Yeah, the fire.
Oh, bless us, sweet Jesus.
And they're making the seaweed soup.
Now, this is a soup as only the women of Roan Inish knows how to make.
Learned it from my mother.
And hers and hers.
And hers before that again.
The Selkie lady.
To the first Cornelis.
They learnt it from the dark woman, from Nuala.
That's it, from Nuala.
There's some as tells it like that. If you're out in dirty weather, it's like the lifeblood flowing back into your veins.
Part of the backbone of a wheel.
Jimmy brought it in.
Did he?
Great job in this touching. It'll have its test in a few minutes.
It's a south wind, grandfather.
They're often the most fierce.
So hope it's okay.
Jamie, poor little soul.
Will he come back?
It's a little sea.
I feel it. Like snuffing out a candle.
Look,
There he is.
Jimmy, it's me, Fiona. We come back for you.
Ah, Fee. Hello.
Don't go. It's your family here.
Oh no, but his family is in the sea. They're all talking as if to go, that's right, we'll tell him he can stay. Really clever the way they've done this. For the storytelling of doing this as well. Take away the bed so he can't go back.
Heavenly Father, you look at that. They're telling him to stay.
But he's afraid.
Come on, Jamie boy.
Don't know if they'll get the dad back on the island now. Now they don't the houses, and he's got his son back as well. By the way, the people that did the music for this film, incredible job. Bye. Go.
There you go, love.
We'll be staying here now. Thank you.
And they don't even have to pay rent there either.
Lord, love his little heart. He's hungry.
Little family again.
What's Jake?
I wouldn't think he could answer you, Fiona.
Teach you to talk. I'll tell you stories. And your friends that have been looking after you can see you any time they like.
Fiona's to thank for finding you, Jamie boy. She gave me her word. I just wouldn't believe it. But when you look at us, back in Roan Inish, breathing fresh air after being 3 years underground.
Do you remember me, Jimmy? Your sister Fiona. Fiona.
Oh.
He's destroyed with the excitement.
At least he'll sleep warm tonight.
Oh, they kept his bed there. I thought they were taking it back. The seals. Unless they kept it there for him to go back if he ever wanted to. Oh, I love that film. Really, really liking this music. Also loving the pictures on the on this as well. The little drawings. Wow, so quaint, and that exact thing that I love about places like Yes Island, but also one of the reasons I massively love places like Cornwall. I love the little quaint seaside towns, the villages, but I've yet to go on proper solo trips to Ireland. I would love to. Thoroughly, thoroughly grateful for you guys requesting this and for me having now seen it. I can't believe I've never seen it. I don't know how I've ever missed this film. I've never even heard of the film. Strangely nostalgic, even though I've only been to Ireland a few times, and it's beautiful, so thank you so much. Oh, I wanted to look up who did the music in that film, just very briefly. I know I mentioned it at the beginning of the film. Music is Mason Daring, okay. Well, I think it says it at the end where it was actually filmed. Yeah, the kind people of Rosberg and Portneuf in County Donegal.
First to Donegal, where independent filmmaker John Sayles, who got an Oscar nomination for his movie The Passion Fish, has been filming his latest work.
It looks like an island, but it's not. That was the main reason Rosbeg became the ideal location for The Secret of Roan Inish, a tale about the legend of the Selkie, a creature part human, part seal, and filming here has gone perfectly for director John Sayles.
You kind of rely on the kindness of strangers when you go into a distant location, and people have been great. And also, you rely on people who know how to do things that you don't know how to do. So we found, a local guy, John Masters, who's a thatcher, and we found, we have a lot of stuff out on the water, so we've relied on the local boatmen. If you've got a camera in one boat and actors in another boat and the sound crew and yet another boat, keeping them all in line and not getting in each other's way and each other's shot is really difficult. So it's good to have people who have a lot of experience doing that and who know the local tides and the local where a rock is going to come up.
Because I was wondering at first if maybe her mother, if Fiona's mother, was supposed to be almost one of those half human, half seals as well. And the fact that she asked where her mother was from as well kind of made me think, I wonder if she was almost hoping that she was, and that she was this mystical being, that she wanted to almost hope that she was like Nuala. As of filming this, one of the major films that I've just finished editing, and obviously had seen it ages ago, but I have finished editing, Interview with the Vampire from 1994. Susan Lynch was not only in this film, but she was in Interview with the Vampire. She plays Paris Vampire. This came out the same year as Interview with the Vampire. This film, The Secret of Roan Inish, was her first ever film that she ever did back in 1994. She'd only done TV shows before that. I've just realised, is that the reason why you guys requested this film? Because of, to see if I would maybe recognise her, or because she plays in both of these films, or is it just really strange timing?
And local ideas were mixed with new technology and the transformation of a workshop into a studio.
Well, that was thatched for soundproofing so that they could shoot inside while it was raining and the rain wouldn't make any noise on the roof. So we had to use some baled straw and put it on underneath a fishnet on top of the corrugated roof material.
I love that they did the homes up, by the way. That was so lovely. Absolutely gorgeous making of the homes, and the filmmaking obviously of it all as well was beautifully done, because it did make you feel like they were the ones doing all that work. And I feel like there's not too many people these days would just do that kind of thing.
The thatching was all done in authentic Donegal style, and like thatcher John Masters, other locals worked on the production, which they say was in no way intrusive in the community.
It's fitted in very well, yes. There's really been no intrusion. I mean, a few more cars on the road, but sure, we all like to see that.
Gorgeously told in this package of it being real, but also almost feels unreal at the same time, like a whimsical fairy tale. Comforting to watch. Another film for me that I find that with, and it's such a strange juxtaposition between both of these two films, but they're both very different to each other, but also have a very similar feel to it, where the other one is called Heartlands, and I've mentioned this many times on the channel before, and it's this almost cute British film where it's Michael Sheen when he was a lot younger. The soundtrack of his travels is by none other than Kate Rusby, who is from Yorkshire, but her music is very similar sounding to this kind of, Celtic kind of feel. It's that folk music style, and it is gorgeous.
I wonder what is keeping.
If you like that style music, you might like Kate Rusby's music as well. You've likely heard it in the many years since, but this was many years ago when I don't feel like she was as well known. Just something about this film, that's a very comforting film that I would just pop on in the background as well, like this is. So yeah, I am very grateful though, the fact that where I live is actually a little cottage as well. So I kind of feel like I've got my own piece of Roan Inish here. Hey guys, Editing Marty here. On the very day that I'm posting this, just a very quick brief thing. Apologies that I haven't included, and you won't see any of the DVD audio commentary. It is available. If you check out the discs, they are available on there. My issue with it was, I had the disc originally, and what I'd done is when I made the uncut, I converted the file from the disc so that I could use it in the video. What I forgot to think about was that the DVD audio commentary was on that original file, and I deleted it. When I went to go and get back the DVD audio commentary today, I have a corrupt disc. So it's either I postpone to be able to get hold of the copy again, or I just don't give you guys any. So what I'm planning on doing instead is I have found that John Sayles wrote a book called Sayles on Sayles. And in that book, this film is spoken about. I'm just gutted that I do not have more time. It's written by Gavin Smith and John Sayles himself. So he says here about Maggie, who is Maggie Renzi, his life partner. And he says that when she was 10 years old, she remembered reading this book, as in the Secret of Roan Inish, and says there's not enough movies for kids, we should make this a thing. Finally, I read it and I said, you're right, this is a really neat story. So I wrote it in 2 weeks before we went to Louisiana to shoot Passion Fish, so that while I was editing Passion Fish, Maggie and Sarah Green, her partner, could go to look for locations in Ireland. Rosalie Fry's novella was set in Scotland. She's an illustrator too. Some of the shots in the movie are right from her illustrations. And the shots of the little girl lying in the flowers or looking down at her grandfather, or when she's in the boat and the seals are popping up around her in the fog, they're her shots as well. At the very end of the movie, you see some of her illustrations at the bottom under the credits, which is fascinating. Apparently during World War II, she was a coast watcher on the coast of Scotland, and she never saw any submarines with the binoculars, but she saw a lot of seals, and she asked if there were any stories about them, and they told her the story, which exists both on the Irish coast and in Scotland. There you go, that makes sense. I said it in Ireland because besides being a little more familiar with Irish history and culture, one of the things that I did get from the Irish Americans around me growing up and in Boston was that so many American songs are about going on the road, going to a great place, while Irish songs very often are about loss. They're about leaving something behind. That sense of Ireland being this island that's obsessed with loss, their nation, sovereignty, their language, their sons and daughters in a certain past, seemed to me perfect for this kind of story. Most of what he says here is about the oral tradition. So I love the fact that he took the idea of reading stories to children, or, reading these tales aloud, and use that as a form of storytelling in the film itself. Yeah, because he says here, in oral tradition, stories are passed on by word of mouth, generation to generation, and they connect you with your ancestors and who you are as a people. At the bottom of the page he says, I played with different ways to represent that oral storytelling. One thing I didn't do is a whole lot of fast cutting. And something else to note as well, he did a lot of fades between shots. I did not include the fades between just because I didn't want to include too much footage of this film, but yeah, I really liked his addition of the fades in the film. But I did include at least one fade at the very end of the film. I think I may have included some earlier on as well. And the fact that I think it was the writer, director and editor, I think he did all three things for this film. He did an incredible job putting this together, and him editing it himself, that's very much something that I would do if I made a film, because I am my own editor as it stands anyway for the channel. Like I just do my own freelance video editing anyway.
15-year-old Richard Sheridan stars with Mick, Lally, Eileen, Colgan and John Lynch, and a 10-year-old Belfast girl who clinched her part from 1,000 other hopefuls.
So apparently this film in the US and Canada grossed $6 million. It was John Sayles' most popular release at the time, though it was later surpassed by his other films, and the film was released in the US on February the 3rd, 1995. The film's budget was estimated at only $3 million. It was initially considered a difficult film to distribute due to its unique nature. It doesn't tell me how much the film made in the UK, so I'm presuming this was American? It was, yes. It was an American/Irish independent film of Irish magical realism. So over 1,000 girls were tested for the role of Fiona, which required the actress to be thin, underweight, pale complexion, but perky and not afraid of water. I would never have guessed that those were any things that they needed to look out for.
They asked for a small, thin, peaky but perky, light-haired girl My mum says, well, put her in for the experience.
Is it tough work for you?
Well, it's okay, but sometimes I fall asleep.
According to John Sayles in the director's commentary, most of the film was shot in Donegal, Ireland. Yeah, it was based on The Secret of the Roan Inish by Rosalie K. Fry. And apparently, the original novel takes place in Scotland, not Ireland. Yeah, the filmmakers decided to have the film take place in Ireland for practical reasons. Oh, and also this was Susan Lynch's debut.
Oh, this bit here actually mentions about the Gaelic in the film. A huge thank you, by the way, to Vivienne from New York City. I'll leave her links in the description below, but she was absolutely amazing. I reached out to her. She's an influencer, but she's also helping a lot of people understand Gaelic. And she wonderfully transcribed the piece of audio that I was stuck on for this film. But yeah, this says, that's something I brought that wasn't in the book. I wanted this thing about Irish culture. Gaelic is not widely spoken there, but you can still see it in signs. There's still this little connection to the world that came before. I found that to be a good metaphor for Fiona and the way she was living now with the world that came before. Oh, I like that, yes. When seals and people were more symbiotic, and they lived a natural life and made their living off the sea.
I had to look up information about Roan Inish specifically, because nothing that I could seem to find, and it might go into it in this new trivia that I have found, but in the original trivia, there was barely anything, and so I wondered, is it real? Is Roan Inish real? Is this folklore, fairy tale type story, is that real as well? That was passed down as story over the years? And apparently, yes. So known in Irish as Roan Inish, meaning Island of Seals, Roan Inish is a real location near Narin, a village on the west coast of County Donegal in the west of Ulster, Ireland. The film, while fictional, is set on and around this real island, and it does draw heavily on the local folklore and traditions of the area. The real Roan Inish town is a small island in a larger archipelago, accessible from Port New, and it's not a true historical incident, it's a traditional folk tale.
Oh, that's a great idea. He said he even went to Ireland with the script and had several people look at it, including people who were from Donegal and people who were older and remembered the 30s and 40s, and asked them, would your grandmother or your father say this? Is this too archaic? Or too modern for when I'm setting it, right after World War II? But also the Irish-speaking people, including one guy who was the head of Irish-speaking television on the coast, would say, this locution here, you've obviously got it from a book translated from the Gaelic. We don't say that in English. That's a direct translation from the Gaelic. Now there you go, that might make sense. When Vivienne was trying to transcribe the Gaelic that said, we couldn't figure out the specific wording in Gaelic.
The Selkie is on the poster, as in Nuala, Susan Lynch, despite the Selkie only having 5 minutes of screen time. Apparently, Jeni Courtney, who plays Fiona, had never acted before. She's great in this. Never worked with children or animals. The book describes the Selkies as turning into grey seals, which are bigger and more aggressive, and tend to windward sides of the islands, where it would become more difficult to shoot. They used common seals instead, who are more docile and easier to film.
By the way, John Sayles actually does mention in this that what we're seeing isn't something that she is imagining. These are things that are actually happening. The person who asks him the question says, is your conception of the mythic elements of the film, the Selkie in the story, the way natural forces of the sea and the seals and the gulls behave, both in the stories and in the main body of the film, literal as in the howling, or a projection of Fiona's imagination? He then says, what you're seeing in the film is a conscious conspiracy between the sky and the wind and the waves, the water, the seals and the gulls, to take this child and keep him alive until these people come back and hold up their end of the bargain. No, it's not the way she's seeing them. There are scenes where someone's telling her a story and we would see how she would imagine the seal and everything, but within the story, yes, the seals bring the little boy back, and that's not a story she's being told. And the gull comes down and is just watching, kind of supervising the whole thing. The waves get choppy just when they need to throw Jamie back on shore. There's a storm brewing and it waits until they get in the cottage, and then it lets loose. I try to give the audience a hint in the very first scenes, the first point of view that we get that's from underwater, and then you come up and you see the boat. So the establishing point of view isn't Fiona's, We get that later when she looks up and sees the gull. Yes, I've just realised, yeah, the very first shot we see in the film is from the perspective of a seal, the bit where it's in the water looking up at the boat. Wow, I never even thought of that. He says, and also you look over the seal's shoulder at Fiona from the seal's point of view. Yeah, he said it was really important to me. It feels very simple, but this was the hardest shot in the whole movie. Basically, that's me trying to give the audience a hint that there's a consciousness operating here. They're interested in this girl for some reason.
Yeah, it says, how did you get seals to look where you want them to? We had to put the seal on a fake rock on top of a raft. Luckily averted with the child actors, even if they weren't professionals, Mick Lally was very good at working with children. So John Sayles would tell him what he wanted the child actors to do, and he would give them direction, or they were looking at him in the scene rather than off camera to the director. Yes, there you go. Susan Lynch, who plays Nuala, the Selkie, is the sister of John Lynch, who plays Tug. The climactic scene of the seals returning Jamie to land were done in reverse, where the seals used had previously been rescued by nature parks and were ready to be let go, and thus weren't used to be on an open beach before. The scene where they chased Jamie back into the water, they did that basically by releasing them, tilting the camera and reversing the film.
Oh yeah, they also mention about, you know, right at the very end, the camera pulls back from Jamie and Fiona at the fireplace and shows the other characters as well. See, to me, that was almost go from it just being those two throughout the whole film. And I'm not reading on, by the way, this is just me saying, because I don't know what they're about to say. But I think it was to try and show the inclusion of family, going from just those two people to then show the rest of the family, them all coming together and being this one happy home finally again. He says here, it was wide over the shoulders towards the fire. Until that moment, it had been Fiona and Jamie up the fire, and then turning back to the grandparents and the cousin who hadn't believed her. She's hooked into Jamie, and finally the grandfather says, "Look at us all here. Who would have believed it?" It's almost like a shot through the window at the whole family. There you go, yes. We couldn't pull that off, so I just went back. They are together. They're going to keep trying to live there as a family unit. A strange one. Not one that's going to be able to be reproduced itself, but they've made that commitment.
This is it. This is the piece of information I was saying about. Not as bad as most examples, but financing was uncertain. John Sayles had to put up a third of the movie's $5 million budget himself, and a deal with Jones into cable wasn't finalised until 2 weeks into shooting, not before. One local worker who'd helped to build the thatched cottages. What? But yes, in this, they actually built the thatched cottages. I kind of expected them to have almost just used other people's footage. Apparently the local worker who helps to build the cottages got really drunk and burned down half of the sets. You don't even notice that in the film. Apparently it caused $150,000 worth of damage, but it did eventually work out for the best, and the insurance covered it, and the locals of Rosbeg and Port New helped to rebuild them, everyone receiving a $650 bonus. That's so cool.
The cinematographer is Haskell Wexler. Apparently he's very good with dealing with natural light and firelight from candles and fireplaces. That's why he chose him. He says that also weather changes every hour on the Donegal coast, so it was great to see that Haskell was able to match and make everything appear seamless. He said the call sheet would have 3 different scenarios on it. This is the sunny day scenario. If we had any sunny weather, boom, we were right there filming Jamie being taken away. We got 4 sunny days in a row where we could shoot all that stuff. And then here is the nice but cloudy day scenario. And then here is the really funky about to rain scenario. We had to prepare for all 3, and Haskell was able to do variations within each of those and match them up. So he was the perfect guy for me.
Now what I want to do is I want to say a huge thank you for you joining me for this entire video, but also a huge thank you for joining me until this very point in the video. Now one thing I love to do is to say a huge thank you to you for watching until this very point. I love to give you guys a secret phrase, just a little secret phrase that you can then pop down in the comments and let me know whether or not you loved the film or not. And even if you just want to put the secret phrase, that is more than enough. It's completely up to you, whatever you want to do. If you don't want to, that's absolutely fine as well. But it's our secret way of saying thank you. The secret phrase for today's video is "the secret's out." That's it, just "the secret's out." That is the tagline of the film itself. So feel free to pop that down in the comments below. That's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget, if you want to check out the full uncut reaction to this, you can see it over on the Patreon page or as a YouTube member as well. And also feel free to subscribe to the channel as well for more upcoming films, and I'm sure if you love this then you might like some of the other things that we've watched, and I do have a fair amount of classic Hollywood films that are both coming to the channel and already are on the channel. Anyway guys, so thank you so much for watching. Have an incredible day, take care, stay safe, and hopefully I get to see you guys next time. And also, sláinte. Bye bye.
If you're still here to the very end, then thank you so much, and also a huge thank you to my wonderful patrons: Roger C. Griffith, Douglas Collier, Terry V, Miggy Love, Chris Holmes, Jojo, Thomas Masters, Shoehorn1234, Res, Patrick Durr, Andrew Blount, Carlos, Marla Mize, Rob, Chandra Blair, Scott, Paul Zawicki, Randy, Kirsten, Juan Pablo Camero, JL, Maggie, Freya Alexandra, Milo, Miranda, Edna, Gina Aman, Tess Avaland, Olivia, Maria Stoicheva, Neno, Megan Janoviak, Rainy Tomo, Strawberry Tree, Kirsten Bailey, Boobly Boo, Louise Vanderhoven, Aubrey Terry, Wraithist, Heidi Steele, City D, Bumblebee, Joshua, Jesse, Rena Burra, Meet, Lolita Verbakovskia, Eli, Holly Jeffries, Alenka Hafner, HM Garth, Chloe Grover, Neb, Kyle Baker, Abby Barker, Tom Tattershall, Kristen Olds, Tilly Chum, Laura Hutchison, Tara M. Will Coxon, Sazzy Nation, Ferdinand Pitchard, Jim McKay, Sphere, Mel Days, Fran in the Pen, BG, Tara, Rags and Muffins, Nameless Human Being, Deb, Philippa Chapman, Emily, Panda, David Wayne Fox, Jessica Asakovich, Sue Pro, Naja in Workshop, Mike Tunnicliffe, Wolfgang Wolf, Lee, Harvey, Ankame, Aninya, Evan G, Violet Aurora, Pamela Chandler Rash, Scott Howard, Joshua, Robert Williams, Steve Webster, Amanda, Lipaz, Jamie Dodds, King, Happy Go Lucky, Caitlin, Analytical Guy, Maria Torres, Cliff Adams, Jonathan, Dirk, Annie Bonds, Crystal Appleby, Scorpius, Monica Murphy, Sebastian St-Ange, Varga, Leslie McKittrick, Nick Stark, Number 1 Carez, Jen, Biff McKeldin, Birgit, Stephanie Collins, Emily, Ken Duncan, Max, Helena Klitsch, Amy Quattlebaum, Ry Levi, Wayne DeFries, JJ, Mikhail Augustine Reed, Malcolm Hope, Lee Hallam, Bill Waite, Charlie Elkin, Mika Least, Jeffrey Welton, Aleidoscope, George, Ingrid, Stephanie Sexton, Jude, Bera, Robinio GD, Catherine Ellis, Vincent Pare, Sammy Fan, Eric Jansen, David K, Stephen, Edcat, MB8, Border Collie Lover 223, Caitlin, Juiced, The Gallifreyan Rebel, James, Johnny115, Tim, Paul Hess, Frank Tex, Marie Clark, Robin, Matt Quinn, Offer Rock, Bruce Heckerman, Joe, Victoria Helm, James Melton, Beatrice Soiler, Siegfried, Clara Grow-Louis, Lana Gorgeous, David Stafford, Rebecca K. McDowell, Ashley Stanley, Sophia, Fabian, Paul Byrne, Bear, Nadia, and Chris Thompson. If you'd like to see more videos, there's some more on the screen right now. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and see you next time.